Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland. So, welcome back to my channel once more. Well, what's happening in the Middle East is very worrying. So, Israel launching airstrikes on the Houthis in Yemen. Now, about 40% of Yemenis are Shia Muslims, the rest are Sunni. And there was actually a significant Jewish community there in the 20th century. They virtually all moved to Israel. But anyway, the Houthis, they're aligned with Iran. For over a decade, there's been a vicious civil war in Yemen. Now, civil wars are seldom nice. Of course, people are going to get killed. What I mean by vicious is there's been large scale slaying of civilians, often by Saudi airstrikes. Is it malice or is it just sheer incompetence? I've heard the latter, which is not terribly complimentary to the Saudi Arabians either. Deliberately withholding food from whole areas to starve civilians into submission, and so on. So Israel's widened its war. The Houthis are Iranian aligned. Remember, Iran is the leading Shia country in the world. Over 90% of them are Shia Muslims, and that is the state religion. The Sunni are discriminated against in Iran. They are allowed to practice their religion, but they're just not going to get any promotion in the state. The state is suspicious of them, surveils them. Um, Anyway, so Israel has acknowledged that these are large-scale airstrikes, and they say the Houthis are terrorists. Many would agree. The Saudi Arabian government is against it as well. Remember, Israel had painstakingly achieved rapprochement with several Arab countries, established diplomatic relations with the United Arab Emirates, and I think it was Bahrain in the last couple of years. Now, so perhaps surprisingly, the UAE and Bahrain have not broken off diplomatic relations. There was even talk about Saudi Arabian recognition of Israel, and that really would be a game changer. The big daddy of Islam, the king of Saudi Arabia, been the custodian of the two holy mosques in Mecca and Medina, right? So, and if that's gone well, not that many Sunni Muslims would have reasons to oppose recognizing the Zionist entity, as they used to call it. But they've scuppered a lot of that. Obviously, in the short term, there's no possibility of Saudi Arabian recognition of Israel, given the terror that Israel is wreaking on civilians in Gaza and elsewhere. And so now this will be applauded. The attacks on the Houthis will be applauded by many Western capitals. Remember, Houthi rebels, they targeted shipping in the Bab al-Manab, that narrow strait in the Red Sea, quite an important shipping route, really an arterial shipping route for many countries in the past couple of years. So anything which degrades their ability to menace commercial shipping will be greeted enthusiastically in many Western capitals. On the other hand, this is widening the war. It's destabilizing the whole region, and it's actually doing a favor to the Saudi Arabians. Much of the Saudi Arabians have some sympathy for the Palestinians. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So there are also rocket strikes into Dahia near Beirut, where Hezbollah is there. Hezbollah meaning Party of God, that Shia militia, terrorist group, as some people call it, which is aligned with Iran, funded, armed, trained, to some extent directed by Iran. So Lebanon is got the highest Christian percentage of any Arab country, or any country in the Middle East, indeed. Up to 40% of them are Christians, but there's been no survey for since almost a century. So that is an estimate. It had a Christian plurality, thought to declined. The governorate of Mount Lebanon was part of the Ottoman province of Syria, and the French took it out of Syria after the First World War to have that. They hoped a Christian majority country, which they felt would be amenable to French colonial rule. It didn't entirely work out, and the rest are divided between Sunni, Shia, and Druze. The Druze people, they are a breakaway from Islam in the 10th century AD. They regard themselves as Mohammedans, but mainstream Muslims say you're not Muslim, so call yourself that. Your prayer houses, they are not mosques and so forth. So the Druze trying to keep a low profile. So that's why it's of all the Arab countries, it's got the lowest percentage of Sunni Muslims. Sorry, Lebanon. Only about 20% of actually Sunni Muslims. But anyway, so this sort of uneasy peace between the different ethnic religious communities in Lebanon. Remember, they had a horrific civil war from about 1975 to about 1990. I remember in a plane which touched down in Beirut on my way to Qatar in 1994, just after the civil war, and the place was wrecked. There's so many empty shells of buildings, so many pockmarked walls. Is really rebuilt, and then Israel is ruining the country. So Israel says it's taken out 20 leading Hezbollah figures in the last few days. So all these strikes up to 1 million people have been displaced. That's something like a third of Lebanon's population. It's a small country, even smaller than Israel. So it's really ruining Lebanon. Now, the Lebanese armed forces are quite small and weak, and that's why Hezbollah is almost a state within a state. And Beirut, I've never been. I'd quite like to go. Now doesn't seem like the ideal moment, but because it's such a spectrum of lifestyles, there'll be women swathed in the black abayas and so on, who will be, sort of following medieval Islam, versus ladies in mini skirts or whatever, cocktail dresses, night clubbing. Um, Wow, so there's such a diversity of opinion and attitudinal diversity there. Most cosmopolitan place in the Middle East, people often trilingual, speaking Arabic, French, and English. But carry on about this. So um, Israel illegally occupied Lebanon for decades, South Lebanon, and indeed still occupy a tiny sliver of South Lebanon. President Joe Biden is not best pleased, and he really doesn't want a full-scale conflict in the Middle East. But Israel, they think they're on the up and up. They must be obviously quite confident about Gaza, that they've got enough forces to spare to widen the war. Is this about Netanyahu trying to stay in power, delay these investigations into him? He doesn't want to go to jail. We're coming up to the first anniversary of the 7th of October attacks. Okay, about 1,000 Israeli civilians murdered, deliberately killed, knowing them to be civilians. And what Israel's done about 40 times worse. And I accept there will be collateral damage, but a lot of it is not collateral damage, killing civilians, knowing them to be civilians, and that every single clinic and every single hospital and every single school is where Hamas is hiding. Yeah, right. It might be true occasionally. And deliberately cutting off food, water, gas, medicine, everything from Palestinian civilians, wide-scale torture of Palestinians or captured, or perhaps I say kidnapped by the Israelis. It really is just horrendous. Put yourself in the position of someone in Gaza. You would want to defend your homeland. The Israelis say they want to defend their homeland too. Well, that cuts both ways, I'm afraid. Um, but maybe Netanyahu thinks that his chum, Trump, will come back, and this will increase the chances of it because of his bellicose rhetoric, and say, "Oh, look what a failure Biden is, because this sort of conflict didn't happen under me," which is partly lucky timing, partly COVID was why there wasn't conflicts under Trump. Anyway, because Netanyahu thinks that if Trump comes back, he's very easily to butter him up. You can just manipulate him so easily. Like psychological buttons to press. Just toady to him, praise him effusively, just to a sickening degree, and they'll give you what you want and say, "Yeah, use weapons of mass destruction against the civilians. I'll send you any weapon you want. Let's start a war against Iran or something." Despite the fact that Trump has made maintaining peace one of his major successes. So yeah, the shortages of food, there's panic buying in Lebanon. So it's all very dispiriting. And the Israeli Defense Force claim they've struck 120 uh, um, uh, targets in Lebanon alone, but not against Iran. But what can Iran do? Now, but Hezbollah said to have quite a big arsenal. Israel might be biting off more than can chew. Will there be ground invasion? They've been counselled against it, but he's very hawkish, Netanyahu. And he's no spring chicken either. He's 76, one of the oldest prime ministers in the world. Obviously, it was a Labour government. It was Ehud Olmert invaded Lebanon in 2006 and fought there for about 34 days before pulling out. Rather indecisive war. So it's all very worrying, but obviously Iran doesn't border Israel, but they do have their Revolutionary Guard in Syria. And one of the reasons Israel has been doing this, they probably think that Iran, obviously enfeebled by the sanctions, but also weak at home because a lot of disorder, a lot of dissent and demonstrations, that's largely died down. In 2023, the British Foreign Office gave a 50% chance of a revolution in Iran that year. It's much lower now, but it's maybe like 20%. They think that the Iranian government can't stretch itself, doesn't really have the authority to fight a full-scale war against Israel. But Israel may be provoking too many people if all its enemies come after them at once. Well, it's very melancholy. I'm just maudlin about the whole situation. I suppose I've got to count myself as lucky to live in peace. Yeah, I wish we could have peace with justice, but I wouldn't bet on it. We are full of a world of suffering, cruelty, and injustice. Evil is so often rewarded. Goodness is so often savagely punished. How I wish there were a God to sort it all out and do justice. But, there's no reason to believe that. Anyway, count your blessings if you happen to live in peace. I wish we could do something, but Netanyahu is deaf to pleas for humanity, he can't be reasoned with. What on earth can we do? Which is not to say that his enemies are all good either. Right. Well, I wish there were peace and justice for all. I know it sounds glib, but words fail me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Bye.